Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's office hours. We are just going to spend a moment going over some tech notes and logistics before turning things over to today's great team of presenters. So first and foremost, I just want to remind everyone that we are recording the office hours this week as we do each and every week. A copy of the recording along with the slides and a copy of the content from chat will all be posted to the HUD Exchange on the link that's up there on your screen now. It will be posted in about 2 to 3 business. Additionally, if you have any audio issues throughout the course of the webinar, we do encourage you to switch over to the phone audio, which is both up there on the screen right now, as well as in the chat. Those are the numbers that you need to dial in if you'd like to switch over at any time to phone audio. Additionally, we are going to keep everyone muted today for the duration of the webinar, but do anticipate and hope to hear from you throughout in the chat feature. So if you're not quite familiar with where to find the chat feature in WebEx, just take a look on your screen, and on the bottom, all the way down towards the right, you should see what looks just like a message bubble and the word chat. Just click on that and it'll open up chat for you. Please send all questions, comments, feedback in through the chat functionality, and we'll be checking that throughout. When you are sending us those messages, though, just take a moment to please make sure that the bar says to everyone. That's what helps make sure that not only all of the presenters, but all the attendees that are with us today can see all the great content coming in. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Norm Suchar from HUD's Office of Special Needs Assistance Programs. Norm?
Thank you very much, Natalie, and welcome everyone to the office hours session today. We have a great list of topics and presenters. We're very excited to present today. So I'm going to walk through introducing everyone. I expect today's session will last about 60 minutes, but we can go longer or shorter depending on how it goes. So let me just get straight to the introductions. So again, I'm Norm Suchar from the SNAP's office. As you can see on this slide here, we have several other people from the SNAP's office that are going to be presenting and responding to questions today. We're very excited to have a couple community presentations, one from the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services. Kathy Possinger and Ali Fogarty will be presenting. And we also have a presentation from Danette Romines from the Director of Programs at Aurora, Inc. In Evansville, Indiana. So very excited about those presentations. We also have our regular update from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. So we're very excited about that. And we will also get an update on ESGCV funding and a few other things from Sharon Singer from the SNAP's office. Also want to mention we do have a poll question. The poll question is about implementation of the Department of Treasury's Emergency Rental Assistance Program. As many of you know, this is a very, very large program and resource to prevent evictions for people. It is a hugely important resource. And we know that you all are working very hard in your communities or partnering with people in your communities to get that implemented. And we wanted to ask some questions about how that implementation is going and what some of the major challenges are. So you'll see the poll in the chat window. You can click on that at any time and go ahead and fill out the poll questions. So please do that as soon as you can. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Ashley Meehan from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention for our CDC update. Ashley?
Thanks, Norm. Hi, everyone. This is Ashley Meehan with CDC's Homelessness Unit for the COVID-19 response. We can go to the next slide, please. All right, so here we're looking at the map of community level transmission for COVID-19. So ideally, counties in blue have low transmission. We'd like to see every county moving towards blue. The trends are showing decreasing number of cases, but again, certain communities have moderate, substantial, and high community transmission. So still want to wait and see more places turning blue. Next slide, please. And so far, about 53% of the US population aged 12 years and older is fully vaccinated. So they've completed their series. So again, that's also trending in a positive direction. Next slide, please. We do briefly want to present about our COVID-19 variant data tracker. So currently there aren't any real big implications for variants that may be spreading. As you can see, it looks like the B117 variant is the predominant variant that we're seeing right now. But it is starting to change a little bit in the recent weeks. So we just want to keep an eye on it. Just because they do have different rates of transmissibility. But in terms of practice, continue doing what you're doing. The prevention measures are the same regardless of the variant type. Next slide, please. And the last thing I want to say is that the eviction moratorium has been extended through July 31st. So hopefully we'll be able to put a link to that press release in the chat. And that is all the good news I have for you today. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Great news about the eviction moratorium and also great data on the both the different variants and it's nice to see the progress for states and vaccinations. Congratulations to those of you from, I don't remember all the states from the map, but I think Maine, Massachusetts, Vermont were all dark blue. So well done, guys. So thank you so much. If you have any questions for Ashley, please go ahead and type them in the chat window. But we are going to move on to our next set of presentations. I'm very excited to introduce Ali Fogarty and Kathy Pottinger from the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services. And they are going to talk a little bit about their emergency rental assistance program outreach efforts. So I'm going to turn things over to you, Ali. Take it away.
Can you guys hear
Ali,
me?
we can't hear you. Sorry, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, you sound great. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that. Let me just share my screen real quick. Get the right one. All right. So where are you? Sorry. Bear with me 1 second. There we go. All right. Can you all see my screen now?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. All right, great. Well, thank you all so much for having us today. My name is Ali Fogarty. I am the Communications Director for the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services. My colleague, Kathy Pottinger, is here as well. Kathy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kathy Pottinger. I'm the Special Advisor to the Acting Secretary of the Department of Human Services, and I'm thrilled to be here and with Ali to talk about the Emergency Rental Assistance Program launch in Pennsylvania, but also happy to be here as a former colleague working under the HUD programs with the Commonwealth as well, transitioned into this role about a month ago. To have a focus on housing with our human services unit as well. So excited to be here and excited to turn it back to Ali to talk about the resources that she's launched for outreach for our EREP program.
Thank you, Kathy. So my team has been, our PADHS is administering emergency rental assistance in Pennsylvania. And my team has been for the past 3.5 months since our program launched in Pennsylvania, very much focused on getting the word out in this however much we can. We had some challenges in Pennsylvania with the first round of rental assistance last fall that have informed our approach for this round of funding to try to reach out through every corner as much as possible to make sure people know that this resource is available and that it doesn't. The way we're structuring it in Pennsylvania, they do not have to have, tenants do not have to have landlord permission to apply for the program. There's a workaround if the landlord doesn't want to participate. So that was one of the challenges we had in the fall. So because of that experience, we've been trying to get have an aggressive messaging strategy as much as we can around this. One thing that we put together to help with this, both from us as DHS and our partners around the state, is to put together a media kit. We did this because we know that some of our county agencies that are running ERAP, different advocacy groups and partners around the state who are invested in this program's success have different levels of resources of what they can invest in promoting the program in their community. So we wanted to make it as easy as possible for them to be out talking about ERAP, putting posters up, flyers wherever they can, and getting the word out about it on social media and in their local news outlets. So what we have, and this is both located on our website and it has been sent out to some of our partners in the legislature and stakeholders, and we continue to push it out proactively, is our media kit hosted on our website, which is dhs.pa.gov/ERAP. I can put the link in the chat after I'm done speaking. We have a number of different flyers. Some of them are geared towards landlords. Some are geared towards tenants. We have ones that walk through the different application materials that people need to try to get through the application process a little bit quicker, how to complete the application itself. We have one that is geared towards our continuum of care, showing that ERAP can help with rehousing costs for people who are experiencing homelessness. We have a litany of social media posts, sample press releases, newsletter text. We really, like I said before, we wanted to make this as easy as possible for people to just come in, take what they need, and send it out to the people that they serve. And a lot of this is also translated into 6 additional languages. When our program administration side were making the paper applications for this, they identified beyond English the 6 most spoken languages in Pennsylvania, which are Spanish, Arabic, Chinese, Cambodian, Vietnamese, and Russian are what we publish the application in. So all of the social media posts, the newsletter copy are all translated into those languages as well. And we have the flyers some of the flyers available in multiple languages too. So all of that's available on our website. Folks can download high quality images of it. They have the text available. And then, like I said, we have a PDF version of it that we've been sending out to partners in the legislature, other stakeholders. We really view this as an opportunity to get ahead of what could be obviously a public health and housing crisis. But if we have a wave of evictions, it doesn't just stop there. It's an economic development issue. It's a workforce issue in communities. It affects our schools, child welfare systems. We want everybody to be invested in this as we are, and realize that if come August 1, we start to see more evictions happening and this becomes a really serious problem, it's not just going to affect those families. It's going to affect every part of our community. So we are trying to take a broad approach to this to show that we all have an investment in making this program a success. And one of the ways that we informed what we put together in this kit is through conversations with the counties and with some of our partners around the state. And Kathy has been leading a lot of those efforts. If you want to talk about what you've been hearing from them, Kathy.
Sure, thanks, Allie. And I think that, again, this is a great resource. We encourage as many of our partners in other states to utilize the tools that are available, or to, as we always do, research and duplicate, identify some great tools that are out there to use in your communities. So we've had continued regular conversations and outreach, and ensuring that the work that's happening in the field, we can identify where pinch points are impacting applications being processed in a timely fashion, the message about program, the inconsistencies, as Allie had mentioned. Our prior iteration under the COVID Relief Fund had some very stringent requirements associated with the program. So we wanted to ensure that folks knew that this wasn't the prior emergency rental assistance program, and it was intended to address a whole host of needs to make our landlords whole where possible and to really assist those in our communities. So we've continued this as part of a mega outreach effort in order to ensure the success of the program. We're still experiencing pinch points. We're still identifying some challenges related to income documentation or categorical eligibility, or or other nuances of the program. But these are tools that we have to help our communities to work through them. And we don't want lack of understanding of the availability of the resource to be a barrier to success in the program. We want to ensure that this unprecedented amount of resources is available to anyone who qualifies and anyone who needs assistance. We're thrilled when we talk with our communities who are really going above and beyond and taking a yes and approach to assisting families. And we recognize that many of them are really pairing these resources with resources of HUD as well. And whether it's the Emergency Solutions Grant, ESGCB, other continuum funding, our partnerships with all of those organizations are so critical to the success of this program. So, and in part why the legislature opted to put these resources in the hands of the Department of Human Services, recognizing that we have a touch beyond just as a housing agency, but also as a human services or agency focused in Medicaid programs. And there's such a crossover opportunity for those that are eligible for many of our other resources. So again, we're thrilled to be here. We're thrilled to be part of the conversation. Unfortunately, Allie just lost her connection, which is probably good timing as well, but we're thrilled to be here and answer any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you so much, Kathy and Allie. Kathy, while you're on, I just wanted to ask you, what feedback have you gotten from the materials? I'm specifically curious about, have you had any contact from landlords who've seen the materials and reached out and are curious about the program?
Absolutely, Norm. Yes, we have. And we've had some great connections with our colleagues at the Pennsylvania Rental Owners Association, as well as the Pennsylvania Apartment Association. Both represented slightly different demographic of landlord. Our rental owners associations tend to be the smaller mom and pop organizations, for lack of a better term, those landlords that may own less than 5 or 10 units, whereas the apartment association may actually cover landlords that cover multiple states. We've had some great feedback from them on these tools and these resources to help them to outreach to their landlords. We're finding that in many cases, landlords are cooperative with the process, are working collaboratively with their tenants to complete applications. They're working with them to do specific outreach if they know that someone is behind. They're looking at this as a tool and a resource to be able to keep those folks stably housed as well and recognize the real value in it.
And are there specific messages that seem to resonate with landlords? And I guess there may be different messages for different kinds of landlords. You talked about the mom and pop ones and the ones who have like multiple properties across states. But can you talk about what kinds of messages seem to resonate with landlords?
Well, as we mentioned before, the program as it had operated under COVID relief had some very strict limitations in the total amount of assistance that landlords were able to secure, and then required on top of that the landlord forgive any outstanding debt, beyond that for the months that they were served. So the real challenge that we identified on the front end was changing the narrative as it related to the type of assistance. There were many landlords that may have said at that time, when Pennsylvania had over $100 million in that program, many landlords said, been there, done that, and I'm not doing it again, and weren't willing to participate and be part of that dialogue because of the restrictions. So really transitioning that dialogue to ensure that they understood that many of our counties who are administering the program at the local level are spending time and effort in just outreach and listening to the landlords, talking about their concerns, but also mitigating some of those perceptions that aren't accurate any longer, and ensuring that they know that this isn't their father's ERA program. And this is an opportunity for them to be made whole. And we recognize one of the real challenges here is that for landlords in particular, their assistance and their ability to be made whole result from the pandemic is really contingent on someone else and someone else doing something, unlike businesses or others. So we want to make this as seamless as possible to them. In each of our counties who operate the program a little bit differently, they're really catering it to the landlords in their community and really focused on that personal touch and that outreach. And so for many of them, having these resources in multiple language, having these resources available to them that they can get out there has been a real asset to them.
Great. And on the tenant side, have you found that there were any messages that sort of surprised you that really resonated with tenants that you found?
For many of our tenants, one of the things that we're really focused on, and I know our counties are very focused on this as well, is making sure that they know the resources, A, that the resources are available, that B, this is a means for them to avoid eviction. But really importantly are the tools that we have of what do you need to have with you when you seek assistance? What materials and tools do you need to have available? So that way, and Allie, thank you for pulling it back up here. What supporting docs you need. We want to be able to get in and see these applications and touch them once and be done. What we're finding is that in a lot of our communities, we are really spending a ton of time going back with tenants. I'm sure this is the case across the country. We've heard it on a number of calls of having to go back to our tenants, seeking additional information, making sure that they have the documentation that's appropriate. It's tough, and this is even with self-attestation. I hate to say this, Norm, and you know this, that we always have the fear of the audit behind us of what are they going to ask for on the back end, and sometimes that's a challenge. And getting to that point of making sure that we've got the backup and the data and the information that's necessary in order to process the apps. But our goal is to really be able to help as many people as we can. We want to ensure that we're not causing a crisis in our communities because of many people being put out, doubled up, struggling with housing instability, when we know that the market is so challenging for anyone who is looking to move out of a home and into another affordable unit.
The one thing I'll add on to that
Great.
too, on the messaging side, when we first opened up applications for the program, applications are running differently depending on what county somebody is in, but about just under 50 counties in Pennsylvania of our 67 are participating in a singular online application that we are running from DHS and then sending the information to the county level. We were expecting a pretty big influx from the start of applications that didn't come initially. And from that and other conversations with partners, we learned anecdotally that a lot of people were finding some safety in the moratorium and had not rushed to pursue this assistance from the start. So that's why we've really embedded the don't wait message properly or prominently throughout everything. And we want people to get the application started now, particularly if some counties are moving through applications a little bit slower. We don't want people to be in a position come July 30th where they're just getting started if they don't have to be. We are running a small paid media campaign too, with some ads through Google search and on Facebook and Instagram, that the don't wait message is really prominent throughout.
Great, that's some really helpful information. Thank you so much for sharing. You all clearly have put a lot of thought and intelligence into these materials, and I have to say they look great. Thank you very much for sharing with us. If you have any questions for Kathy or Allie, please feel free to type them in the chat window. They'll be on for a little while to help answer some of these questions. We're going to move on to our next presentation. Very happy to introduce Danette Romines from Evansville, Indiana. And Danette is going to, well, I'm just going to turn it over to you, Danette, for your presentation. Take it away.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate being invited to this. Aurora in Evansville, Indiana was very fortunate to be the hub for several funding grants to be able to help people from entering in homelessness through eviction. And so if we can go to the next slide, just to explain kind of our geographic location, we're located in the lower left-hand corner of the state in Region 12. Our regions are split up. These particular set of numbers are through IHCDA and the Homeless Services. And so we have 10 counties within our region. Vanderburgh County is, we have several homeless services in this area, and so we do a lot of the shelter supporting for the region if somebody does find themselves in need of emergency services. So with that, we have several agencies that have financial assistance and things like that. Knox County is another, the next biggest city area involved in, has a lot of services available there as well. Can I have the next slide? This is just kind of a brief example of the funding resources that came in for the COVID relief. IHCDA was a big part of the statewide funding. United Way played a hand in both most of our communities. Duke Energy and Lilly Foundation were supportive of the Knox County area, and in the city of Evansville, and then the Greater Evansville Relief Fund also was mainly for Vanderburgh County. Next slide. So a big reason that we were able to spend or reach the 50% goal and above of the grant funding, a lot of it had to do with collaborative funding. I don't think we could have done it with just any one source, but ESG was definitely a big proponent of that. So we were the hub agency for Indiana, or for our region through Indiana. So we have two streams of ESG coming in. One is through the state of Indiana, IHCDA, Balance the State, and then the other one is through Evansville, which is considered an entitlement city. Also through Evansville, we were granted the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and then the COVID Greater Evansville Relief Fund. Next slide. Here are some of the dollar amounts that we were awarded. I won't go into all the details, but as you can see, there were different things for different reasons. Our biggest part of that was the rapid rehousing and then the homeless prevention. Next slide. And then our state funding, as you can see, we also had additional budget modifications as funds were allocated and reallocated throughout the state. And one of our biggest barriers to this funding, though, was that it was all reimbursement. And so therefore, we had to ask for a loan in order to be able to process these funds. And that was through the Greater Evansville Relief Fund through the United Way of Southwestern Indiana. And that was a loan of $250,000. And we usually don't operate in that magnitude of dollars. So it was a bit of a stretch for us. If I could, next slide, please. To give you an idea of our expenditures by the month, we created this little graph for you guys. As you can see, it definitely peaked in September. And then right around November, the IHCDA Balance the State closed their portal and application process to do a reset. And so since Aurora was the main proponent of the city ESG as far as processes goes, we also closed that application process because we wanted to make sure that people understood, because they connected our name with all of these funds, and so we wanted to make things as congruent as possible. It also gave us an opportunity to revise our application process and streamline some of our things after we had kind of taken our lumps of figuring out what we were doing along the way. And because there were lots of changes at the beginning. And so once we had a better sense of how to process this magnitude of applications, where the money's coming from, how to get it to the landlords, and making sure that we can communicate that effectively, as you could see, things started increasing after that. Next slide. And in response to, or in regards to that graph before, these are the actual numbers in relationship to the different grants that we were operating out of. Next slide. And just kind of give everybody a description. Like I said, the Evansville area is definitely one of the major proponents in our region for housing and homeless services. But through the state portal or the state application site, we were helping fund many of our different counties. And like I said, Knox County had their own funds to work out of. So through the state application, 65% were through the Vanderburgh County, 9% Warwick, which is our neighboring county. And then, it goes on from there. Du Bois is a little further north from us. And so that's just kind of the disbursement of the household served through that. If I could have the next slide. Since we don't have the application information from the balance of state, what we do have is for Evansville individually. And so we posted up this graphic to show the number of applications that came through our agency for the City of Evansville funds. So the City of Evansville funds do not touch on any of the other counties. It's just strictly the City of Evansville. And these arrows here kind of indicate the timeline of events that happened along with these, that coincide with these numbers. So at the beginning, with the smaller number of 17 applications, that's when the Indiana Governor's Rental Assistance Fund came through. And that was at the rate of assistance up to $500 for up to 4 months. And it was a very flexible fund. And so when applications came in, we were prioritizing people into those in order for them to get kind of the quick and easy funding to get their needs met. The large number in September that we received was whenever the CDC moratorium came by, and they wanted people to make their best effort to apply for assistance in order to qualify for the moratorium. So we had several people apply in September of 2020. And then, as you can see, we maintained a pretty steady amount. And then in March of this year is whenever the Indiana Emergency Rental Assistance, or the IERA, opened up. And once again, that was a less restricted fund. So we encourage people to try that one out first before going through us. And so therefore the applications decreased after that. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we were receiving 2 separate ESG fund streams. And so one throughout the state, which is the IHCDA, and they were asking us to provide households with up to 6 months of arrears, but a total of 9 to 12 months of past and future assistance. And then the City of Evansville was asking us to only provide the lightest touch, which was to provide only the past due assistance. So as I mentioned, the community wasn't aware of the different funding streams. They just knew that Aurora was the one handing out the funds. And so we negotiated with both agencies and settled on providing up to 6 months of arrears and 1 month ahead. And with the state, if it was otherwise warranted, we were able to do a little bit extra with them, but we wanted to communicate that that was the general expectation out of our agency. Next slide. And the other conflict of interpretation was, since our agency was identified as being awarded large sums, because they tell you dollar amounts, they don't tell you anything about reimbursement. And so people just thought that we were sitting here with huge piles of money to help with rent, but only a specific population was eligible under the criteria. And even though the ESG criteria was expanded for this particular funding, it was still pretty restrictive. And then utility assistance was advertised as a claimable expense, which it is, but it proved nearly impossible to execute because in the wording in the leases, it was only we were only able to pay for utility assistance through ESG if it was linked to them losing their housing. And so a lot of the leases said that they they expect people to keep their utilities on, but nothing was said that they would be at risk for losing their housing without them. So unfortunately, due to some specific wording, we weren't able to do that, but we did focus those funds on rental assistance. And partnered with a lot of different agencies to make that happen. The Category 2 homelessness was also a factor in that. You had to be at risk in 21 days from eviction. So we had a lot of people that they knew that they didn't have employment, they knew they weren't going to be able to afford next month's rent, and knew they were going to be late, but did not qualify. So we found people coming back 2 months later because they had asked their landlord to give them an eviction. And of course, this is a legal matter. And so we had people asking to be evicted so that way they can get the assistance. That was really terrifying. And so we did a lot of education on that, but it still happened. Next slide. So some barriers that we experienced were new people needing help. So people that weren't used to asking for help or knew where financial services existed. The other thing was people that were experienced in needing help and seeking out those assistances, but everything had a COVID tag to it. So if you were on fixed or low income, more so the fixed income, so like SSI, SSDI, Social Security, and things like that, you were not financially affected by COVID, and so therefore they were unable to access funds that they normally could through many agencies because it all had the COVID tag to it. And so, yeah, there was a big strain on that community. And as far as navigating changing systems, we have a great network of community agencies here, and we're all on first name basis for as many as there are here in this area. And we were all turned on our ear by all the changes that were happening. Some agencies were open, some of them weren't, some of them changed, just changed the way they did things or their funding and so on and so forth. And so depending on that, we rely on the familiarity to do our job. And we didn't know which end was up for the longest time as things were going through. And then the fire hose of COVID funding with delayed parameters. So we were given notice that there was funding coming and there was going to have a lot of flexibility. And then, another couple months go by and it's a little bit more restrictive and a little bit more restrictive. And then we found out, oh, it's ESG funding. Well, there you go. And so that was really frustrating and a barrier to get services going. The conversion to electronic processes due to social distancing was also, when you're working with people in poverty, electronic processes are difficult to execute, and especially with the library being closed, which is a main source of our, computer usage for people that don't have that. And then we had a huge fear of people falling through the cracks. So we usually have a pretty good sense of patterns and things to watch for. And since everything was different, we had a huge fear of that. We still let people come in on a as-needed basis to fill out paper applications if they had no access, with distancing and sanitization and things like that. But we still felt like, people would be left unserved. The other thing too is that, with all the things going on in the community, we had a huge hit on staff turnover. 2/3 of our case management left at some point or another, which meant that we had fairly new staff on people that we did hire on, and then trying to train them. And then, more and more people are finding themselves struggling to maintain their housing. And then we have, more calls, more emails, more people showing up, and but a decreased agency staff and capacity. And then, working socially distanced, and there for a while, we were working remotely. Also, like I mentioned before, the large funding awards through reimbursement and it was a huge scramble to try to figure out how we were going to be able to afford the initial payments for all this assistance. And then COVID definitely bruised our landlords and the landlord relationship because they felt powerless. A lot of them didn't understand the moratorium and what the guidelines were on that. And there was just a lot of confusion going on. And so we had a lot of landlords that, this past couple months have said, I'm out of the business. And they were some of the ones that we really leaned on for our clients that were harder to house. Next slide. So our strengths, and one of those things in our particular region is collaboration. We gave each other, grace, and, didn't get upset with each other. We can do what we can do. The city of Evansville pitched in quite a bit. A lot of businesses did the best that they could. We just really, buckled in and got some things done. We were able to assist people with large amounts of financial assistance that we don't normally get to do. Usually we do a few $100s here and there, maybe, $1,200, and we were helping people with $6,000, $7,000, $10,000. It was numbers that, we didn't get to see very often. And then, navigating changing systems. Well, we've got, social workers here that really like to, experience challenges and solutions that were finding themselves in a bit of a rut. And then this happened, and I mean, even though we had our aches and pains and everything, we really felt like we achieved something, and the extra funding helped in a big way. And then, the strength of the staff turnover, and many people feel like, well, how is that a strength? Well, it identified our agency weaknesses, and we're building a stronger organization because of it. And we hired some great people that were born in the fire of COVID. And so now that things are calming down, the hecticness of everyday life here at Aurora, it's not as bad. And then the front end funding that we received, that $250,000 to help do the initial money to be claimed, was supported by the local community, and they let us maintain the loan until we were able to have enough reimbursement to pay them back, and which we have successfully done. And it gave us an opportunity to introduce our services to a new batch of landlords. So there were a lot of people that didn't even know that we existed. We're a very quiet agency, and people don't know we exist until they need us. And so, there was a lot of landlords that normally would not have reached out for community assistance for their tenants, and we got to build some really great relationships out of that. Next slide. I do want to give a nod to our partnering agencies in homeless prevention. These in particular were in our Evansville-Vanderburgh area. And then, our community action program, Salvation Army, Catholic Charities, they all received COVID funding along with Aurora. The St. Vincent de Paul Society was, whenever I mentioned those households with the limited income and everything, and then struggling to find relief due to COVID, St. Vincent de Paul was really great in stepping up and not putting the COVID tag on their financial assistance. So we did have a little bit of a relief on that, but it was only one agency instead of the many that normally help out with these services. Next slide. Okay, so where we are today, once again, we're collaborative. We've been assessing where we are and how we've all been affected and what can we do differently. There's been a lot of things that we've operated on pre-COVID that was like this is how we've always done it. And it really gave us an opportunity to try new things and have that ability to do so. So we continue to collaborate. Our office access is returning to normal. We've opened up our lobby. People are coming in again and having walk-in services. We still have funding left over, and we're anticipating a new wave of homeless prevention need as the moratorium's coming to an end and unemployment benefits are reducing. So we definitely have plans for that. We also have a meeting coming up with the balance of state in regards to creative ways to use the remaining funding. And then our rapid rehousing, we didn't get to touch on that too much during the COVID pandemic because everybody was kind of on lockdown. And so it was intended to get as many people out of the shelter as possible, but our landlords were all tied up with the moratorium, so there wasn't a whole lot of housing movement going on. Now, that being said, we're kicking it in gear as things are opening up and we're repairing our new landlord stock. But yeah, it's definitely reduced. Even if we had all the money to put, we have currently on nearly 500 people in our system as Category 1 homeless in Evansville. And even if we were to house every one of those and have the money, we don't have enough housing stock to be able to put everybody. So that really was a glaring realization. And then and also the change of resources stalled potential rapid rehousing graduates, because even though we were helping supplement their rent, other things and other crises that crippled them from being able to move past rapid rehousing. So we maintained a full caseload throughout the whole thing, but there was just no turnover in services. And then the front-end funding supported by the local community, we returned that. And the other thing today, we're still around. So I'm very grateful for that. Not all agencies made it, businesses. There were a lot of closures due to this. And we were very thankful that we got to continue to be operational and be able to help people during this crisis. So I think that's it. If my next slide is the Q&A one.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to follow up on sort of one of the challenges you talked about, which is about staffing. I know that this has been a sort of a constant concern that people have had, or challenge that people have had across the country, is that because of the additional funding, you just need more staff, both to just administer funds, but also to provide case management and other kinds of services. Can you talk about how did you staff up, and how did you make that work?
Oh gosh, there's so much PTSD involved with that. Even though we had very slim staff for a while, most the ones that we had here that remained were our hardcore, dedicated folks. And they are also some of the best and brightest in our community, which we're very thankful to have. And so we had to get creative and buckle down. We spent long hours and, some tears underneath our desk and things, trying to get through this. The state of Indiana did the application portal and took care of the front end of those applications. So we didn't have to take on the applications of all of those. But we also partnered and contracted with a few people. One of them is a landlord liaison with the city of Evansville, and she has a fantastic relationship with the landlord. So there were lots of overtime hours and endless nights some nights. And as we started to hire new people, in a pandemic and everything. So we hired people that follow their bruises. They say follow your passion, but your passion can be a lot of different things. We wanted people that if they got knocked down, they got back up again, and so we were able to do that. And we have people that are really passionate about the work we did, and still do. And the fact that it was all COVID related, we had a narrowed or more focused mission to get this done. And I will tell you, when reporting time comes, we'll get dinged on our timeliness of our documentation and things like that in our HMIS system. But that was the one thing that, we have to help people. And so the people and the funding and the landlords getting, their money so they can, maintain their livelihood and everything was utmost important.
Thank you very much for that presentation. If you have questions for Danette, please feel free to type them in the chat window. And I want to move on to our next presentation. Before that, I just want to remind everyone that we have a poll question. We're going to talk about that in a couple minutes, but we want to give everyone a chance to, so thank you, Kayla, for putting it in the chat window again. If you haven't had a chance to fill out the poll question, there's still time. So please go ahead and click on that link and fill that out. And with that, I want to turn things over to Sharon Singer from the SNAP's office to talk about how we're doing on ESG CV drawdowns and talk about our poll question. So Sharon, I'm going to turn things over to you.
Hi, everybody. Good to be with you today. And we missed you last week on Juneteenth. So it looks like we've had a lot of movement in our draws. So we are at 11% of funds, awarded funds drawn. So that is a nice bump up from where we were even just a couple of weeks ago. And most of the funds are now in IDIS, but we still have 23 recipients that don't have their funds in IDIS, and we still have 41 recipients who have not drawn any amount for ESG-CV. So we are eager to see movement from them, and we are eager to see additional movement in expenditures and draws from everyone. Folks should have received emails with a dashboard showing expenditures and draws as of the end of May, I believe. And hopefully you are working with your CARES Act staff if you have additional questions or concerns. So in addition, we wanted to remind you that the quarter closes at the end of this month, at the end of June. And while you have a month to submit your quarterly reports in SAGE, we would encourage you, especially if your last report did not show expenditures or very much expenditure, that you submit that sooner rather than later, so you can show all the good work that you've been doing in your community. So we will be in touch, and if you have additional questions, please reach out to the staff who've been in touch with you recently. And with that, I am going to turn over to the poll question, which is related to the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. We just had a great presentation from the folks in Pennsylvania. And while we were on the call, I was looking, they have an amazing site where you can apply for all your human service needs in addition to rental assistance. So it looks like they're doing fantastic work. So we wanted to find out how things are going in your community with the implementation of this first round of funds. You can continue to respond as we're talking now, and you can check more than one. It was just to try and get a sense of what are the challenges that you're seeing. It looks like the largest challenge at 24% is applications are being accepted, but the process is confusing. If you have additional sort of comments about any of these or other challenges, please put those in the chat. We're eager to hear any feedback from across the country. And we also, it looks like 18% of you are saying that there is a lack of coordination with landlord groups, courts, and other key community partners. So that is really a key item that's needed, I think, in order to move forward, you know, with preventing evictions going forward. It looks like 16% of the responses say applications have closed, but funds are being released slowly. And only 5% saying the funds, the applications have closed, but funds have yet to be distributed. And it looks like some 12% saying burdensome documentation has been added by the locality. There was a real effort at the federal level to try and streamline and simplify that as much as possible. And 7% of the responses say funds are flowing, but the amount of funds being awarded, it's not enough to pay arrears. So we are definitely eager to, like I said, to hear additional feedback and share that with others at HUD and Treasury who are working with communities around the country. It looks like we've gotten all our responses for now. If we want to go on to the next question, which is really more of an open-ended question about what are some positive feedback. Oh, this is so cool that this appears in the, you can pull up the comments. So this is great to see. And it sounds like the first comment on the left is saying that one county rolled it out quickly. They received 647 applications, but 37 have been paid. So that's not a good percentage. So, you know, it'll be interesting to find out kind of what's slowing it down, what can speed it up. It sounds like the idea of a wide variety of partners administering funds to reach vulnerable populations is a great tactic. it sounds like there are enough funds to assist households with their rental assistance needs, and that is really the goal of this very large program, and that the funds are lower barrier and can pay more. So that's really helpful is what we're seeing. I'm not going to read all of these. If you wanted to scroll down so we can see the ones at the bottom, that would be great. Thank you for pulling it up in this beautiful format. So if you wanted to slow down, it looks like I'm seeing a theme of fun, like a push up front and then silence once applications have been received. We have someone from Maine saying they've distributed 15 to 20% of their resources, which is great, despite lack of staff. So it sounds like there's a real encouraging energy around being able to assist people with large amounts of money that are needed and many households in need. So that's all really terrific. And then also challenges, it sounds like, with communication and logistics in terms of rolling things out. Again, feel free to continue putting in more comments. And I will put, there is a dashboard that the National Low Income Housing Coalition has created that shows which applications are open, if there have been additional requirements added, and I'll put that in the chat after this. So back to you, Norm.
Thank you so much, Sharon. So we're at the Q&A portion of our session today, and just a couple things I wanted to ask and comment on. One thing I wanted to remind everyone of is that we had a presentation on a few weeks ago from somebody from the Internal Revenue Service that talked about the child tax credit and some enhancements to the child tax credit. We just wanted to remind everyone of that. There's a major push going on to make sure people are enrolled and to educate people about it. We will put a link in the chat window so people can see that. We'd also suggest that you go back to that presentation if you're interested in more information. It really is a great resource, and it can provide several $100s a month of income to households with children. And so just a great resource that we strongly encourage you to work with everyone to make sure that everybody's getting their child tax credit. So thank you for that. Also, we had a question early on about the waivers in the COC-YHTP program and whether some of those are expiring at the end of June, which is just a few days away. So Brett, I wondered if I know you answered this in the chat window, but I wondered if you could talk about what is happening with those waivers and are they going to be extended?
And Brett is not on today, but the limited amount of information that I have about her work on the waiver extensions is that they're underway and that we should anticipate that they will be more time limited. Some of them will be winding down so that we should sort of prepare ourselves for not just lengthy extensions across the board.
Thank you so much, Marlisa, for jumping in there, and sorry about that. So great point there, and I think when people see the waivers, waiver extensions, which should be in a few days, I think it'll be pretty clear which ones are sort of winding down and which ones might stick around for a little longer period of time. So thank you for that. So we have several questions we've answered in the chat window. I'm not sure we want to bring some of those up today. So I think we have answered all the ones that we can answer at this point. We do have a few questions in there that we'll keep working on. I want to thank all our presenters today for giving us some great presentations, some great advice on ESGCV spending and great advice on the Emergency Rental Assistance Program and how to ramp that up. We just can't stress enough how great and important a resource that is, and how, for the next while, this is going to be a huge, huge resource in the in the struggle to prevent homelessness and to prevent evictions for people. So I want to thank everyone for sharing that with us. I want to thank Ashley for giving us the CDC update and the great news about the extension of the eviction moratorium. That will definitely help us in our efforts. And I want to thank all the snappers and all the technical assistance providers who answered questions and kept this office hours running very smoothly. And most of all, I want to thank everyone who is in communities every day working to prevent and end homelessness, to keep people safe through the moratorium. We know that you have worked incredibly hard over the past over a year and continue to do so, and just want to express our admiration and tremendous respect for the incredible work you're doing. So with that, we are going to end the session today. I want to wish everyone a great rest of the day, great weekend, and that concludes the webinar.